didn't sign any.
Okay, Rambam, the fourth chapter, Hilchos Deios. Whole Deios aguf bori v'sholim v'darkei Hashemi. Maintaining your body in a healthy, functional state is the way to serve God, as we said, because if you are distracted and the body fails health-wise, you don't have the vigor, you don't have the energy, or you have pain, this distracts you from serving God appropriately. He says it's impossible to understand and know anything which relates to knowing about God if you're not well. It means you could know, of course you could know, but in terms of it's superficial. You're not able to fully internalize or grasp it. Therefore, a Jew has an obligation to distance yourself from anything which is destructive to the body. Will actually have a negative consequence on your physicality or on your mind. And you have to condition yourself and be accustomed to be involved in areas of life which bring health and give you equanimity. Now we speak to you like a doctor. You know, when Maimonides speaks, even the doctors listen. Yeah, Norman. When Rambam speaks, he's speaking as a doctor now. A person should only eat if you're hungry. If you're satisfied eating, you will not have the benefit of that food. The body will not be benefit. When you drink, you should only drink when actually you feel it's quenching your thirst. There's a degree of thirst. Now this is important. One should not withhold his bodily function, even for a moment. The body, if you feel you have to relieve yourself, do not withhold it, even for a moment, because it's detrimental to your physicality. Person feels he has an urge to urinate, you should urinate, or to defecate, do your bodily function, yamod miyad, immediately get up and do it. Don't hold yourself in. Okay? This is health-wise. Many years ago, I'm going back to the 60s, there was a doctor, he was a Jew, he was a famous gastrologist in New York City. His name was Dr. Paulson. No, in Baltimore, in Johns Hopkins University, Dr. Paulson. And he wrote the textbook, the medical textbook on gastrology. In the 60s, he already was a man close to 80 years old. And he was the world-renowned expert in gastrology. And the Satmar Rebbe, who was a leading Torah sage, very holy man, lived in Williamsburg. That's where he lived in the 60s. And he wasn't well. And he needed to be seen by a gastrologist. So Rabbi Neuberger, who was the executive director in the yeshiva in Baltimore, had all these relationships, because normally if you'd want him, Dr. Paulson, to see him, you could wait a year for an appointment. And not only that, here he had arranged that Dr. Paulson would travel to New York and examine him in New York City, rather than the Satmar Rebbe traveling to Baltimore. Rabbi Neuberger arranged it all, and Dr. Paulson gave him a whole day travel to New York, to Williamsburg, to his home. They set up an examining room, and he examined him. Did the test, everything. When he did the internal, he did whatever, endoscopy, he did a colonoscopy, he did everything. He said that his inner organs were almost like a young child. Normally, a person of his age, a man already was in his upper, maybe early 70s, the internal organs look differently because the endless years of abuse, besides usage. He said it was like a newborn child, almost. It had that level of health. Because the Saba Rebbe was such a tzaddik, was known that before he would pray, he'd make sure that his body was clean. Because if a person feels he has to do his bodily function, you're not permitted to pray. And if you feel that in the middle it's going to happen, you do whatever you can to prepare that it shouldn't happen. And he lived his life this way. Whatever he did was at that level of internal hygiene, not external hygiene. Therefore, as a result of that, he said that's the reason why, health-wise, his internal organs were like that of a young child for that reason. So Rambam's telling you, when it comes to bodily functions, even to withhold yourself for a moment, whether it's urination or relieving yourself, you should do it immediately. That's what he says. Yamod miyad. But he said, and when you eat when you're hungry. When you drink when there's some degree of thirst. That's when the body will have full benefit from that food and from that drink. Lo yochal odom achitzmali kreso. This is famous Rambam. A person should not ever eat to his fill. That your belly is filled to your full capacity. Elo yivchos kimo revim misivoso. You should eat a quarter less than you fully need. Always a quarter less, 3/4 full. This is for health. During the meal, when you eat food, you should drink only a very small amount of water. That's not the time to drink. And what you drink is water, which you dilute wine. You know, in the time of the Rambam, I'm not sure what the quality of the water was in terms of parasites, whatever that water was. So you shouldn't drink in the middle of the meal, and that water should have wine intermixed in that water. Okay? And after you finish eating, when the food starts being digested in your system, in your innards, shoser mashu tzorach lishtos. You drink as much as you have to drink. Let's see, you want to be more hydrated, that's the time to drink. Because now that the digestive process starting, water is essential for the digestive process. Yeah. And he says, but not too much water at that time. Even when the food is fully digested, it's not good to drink too much water. Too much. He says, before you start eating, if you have to do your bodily functions, don't eat. The body functions best when you're fully relieved, then you eat food. Shema yitzor from the cover, because when you eating very often activates the need to do your bodily function, and if you continue eating, it's not healthy. So first you should check to see if you're able to relieve yourself, and only once you feel the body has relieved itself, then you eat the food. You know, it's interesting. Now, there were pictures in the past of Ronald Reagan, who's a favorite of Larry's. Ronald Reagan, he was on his ranch in California, and he was chopping wood in the winter with his big cowboy hat. This is when he was president already. And they would tell people, so what do people do? They eat a Thanksgiving dinner. They eat, with all the stuffing and the cranberry sauce, and like Bob makes it with his chef's hat. Okay? And then the person goes down in the cold and he starts chopping wood. Right now, the digestive system is drawing on the heart, which is pumping the blood to digest. And now you're exerting yourself. The person now is chopping wood. Not only, and the temperature is cold. So the stress you're putting on the system, it's too much. And very often people have heart attacks because of that. Because the system is being overtaxed. Yeah, but the person, that's a robust person. Even for a robust person, it's not the smart thing to do. First chop the wood, then eat the meal afterwards. Because we'll see in a moment. You rev up the system, and when the system is in movement, when you eat now, the digestion is a healthier digestion. So he's saying, before you eat, you should make sure you don't have to do bodily functions. Because if you eat when you do the bodily functions, the body itself is being taxed because you haven't relieved yourself. And you're eating. So the system over here is being pulled in two directions, digestion and dealing with a body that's being stressed because it hasn't been relieved. So first relieve the system by doing your bodily functions, even if it takes a little bit of time, and then eat. That's the healthy way to do it. Lo yochal odem ad she'elech kodem achilo, ad she'yasil gufa lochum. If you're sitting and you're in a sedentary position, don't eat there. You should first walk a little bit. There should be movement, because when there's movement, the body is being activated. The heart beats quicker, the blood circulates, the inner organs have greater movement. So the body should warm up. He uses them warm up. Before you start doing exercise, you get on the treadmill and you warm up. There's a warm-up period. After you warm up, then we talk doing something more strenuous. O yaseh melocha, o yisgeya b'yogei. You should do some type of work, physical work. So by making that effort, that activates the body, similar to walking or any other chore, which actually brings about the same result. Before you start eating, klol shel davar. What's the rule of thumb? Yane gufo v'yageya b'chol yom b'boker. You should actually afflict the body. I mean, do an action which is stress on the body and your physicality. Every morning. The morning's the best time because that's when you have the energy. Until the body starts getting heated. V'yishkot mat. And then after you wait for it to calm down a little bit. You work it up, and then afterwards you take slight pause. The body gets back to itself, then you start eating. So now the body is not in full gear, it's coming down, it's in partial gear. Now's the time to eat. That modicum, that in-between state is the best time for the body to be a beneficiary of the food. The person, let's say, washes in hot water. After you're very tired, it's something which is physically beneficial. You come out of a hot shower, hot bath, it's good. The body is warmed. Wait a little bit of time, and then sit down and eat. Because the same idea, the body is heated, and now it's on the cooling, within the cooling down process. That's the best time to eat. But to go from standstill immediately to eating shouldn't be done. It's not healthy. Lolam shiochal odam yeshiv imkomo. It's healthy to eat when you're sitting, not when you're standing. Oyate al small. And you should, in the olden days, they would actually eat it on a reclining bed. You should lean to your left. It's like at the Seder, when we eat the matzah, it's called aseva, we lean to the left. Why? Because in terms of the epiglottis, if the cover to the trachea, if it opens, it goes down the wrong pipe, a person could choke. So by leaving to the left, it's always covered. The food's going to go down the right location. It's not going to the lung. If food goes into the lung, it could cause very serious problems. V'lo yahalech v'lo yirkav. You should not walk. You should not eat while you're walking. V'lo yirkav. You should not ride a horse. V'lo yiga. And it should not be the time that you're being stressed, you're toiling. V'lo yizazeh gufo. You should not do something which causes the body stress where it shakes. You should not take a walk which has a degree of stress until the food has begun digesting in your system. Once the digestion process starts, you could go for a walk. Otherwise, it's not healthy. A person who takes this walk, a walk is just not a leisurely walk. That person brings upon himself many illnesses which are very serious and very severe. Roim v'koshim. Ra means it's a bad illness, but kosher means it's severe. You will suffer. It compromises you. Hayom v'alaylo chovdal shows. The day and night a day is 24 hours. Da'ilo odom lishon shlish shlishon. Shushmona shows. There's no reason a person has to sleep more than 8 hours. 8 hours, a third of the day is sufficient to sleep. Larry, do you hear that? 8 hours is sufficient. The sofa lailo, and the third that you sleep should be at the end of the night, meaning not the beginning of the night, but at the end of the night. You have 12 hours. So if you're going to sleep the 8 hours, it should be from once the night begins and it ends at the end of the night. Shmona shows from the time you go to sleep till sunrise, it's 8 hours. And you awaken right before sunrise. Now, what's this about? If you rise in the middle of the night, what do you do with yourself? We're talking about a person who lives in a productive society. You have to engage in something. When you awaken, there's activity. So by rising right before sunrise, now you're ready to begin the day. Rise in the middle of the night, it's dark. What are you going to do? You go back to sleep. Okay? But seemingly it's more than that. There's an interesting discussion that the sun has an effect on our body clock. There's a body clock. Like a woman has a menstrual cycle, and the menstrual cycle is affected by sunrise and sunset. Identically, even a man, they found out we have cycles. There's certain days of the month that a person is more prone for an accident than other days of the month. Because there's a certain body clock that's affected by the solar system. Okay? So therefore, by going to sleep into the night, awakening right before sunrise, that means now you're ready for real time, because now you're being touched by the sun. This is the time that the infusion of the solar will make a difference in how you function. That's why I understand it. I never took